Close that. All right. Welcome back, guys. This is Coach Joe Bala of the Joe Bala Fitness Podcast. I have a special guest that I'm interviewing here. Her name is Pipia. She is a fellow personal trainer, Spartan SGX Coach, just like me. She also does Spartan Race Age Group, competitive. She's crushing those courses out there doing that. And she recently earned herself a PhD in Transpersonal Psychology, which we will dig into. I'm curious about that as well. And Tara, her history, her background, she started as a road runner. She's done 13 marathons. Wow, that's impressive. She's even qualified and ran the Boston Marathon. Someday when I grow up, I'll do that as well. And then she's also a former physical education or PE teacher. She has served in the Army, National Guard, and then also served in Afghanistan, as well as other Army-related roles throughout the U.S., from New York to VA, Virginia, and all the way to Georgia. So, Tara, welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I appreciate you. Yeah, I appreciate you being here. The reason I wanted to invite you on, you're very inspiring to me as a fellow athlete and coach, and I wanted to kind of introduce you to my audience and have them learn about your story, be inspired on what you've achieved. So I guess before we dig any deeper, that overview was awesome. I wanted to kind of allow you to step in and introduce yourself, so please do so.
Okay, thank you. And that was a pretty good introduction. You pretty much said everything. See if I could fill in the blanks anywhere. I moved to California 4 years ago, so that was a dream of mine. And then once I got here, I left the Army after 10 years. And I was torn on whether or not I should leave. And the reason I did was because I started my own personal training business. And I enjoyed Spartan racing so much that I tried to get the Army to agree to let me, instead of drilling on the weekends, run a Spartan race. And that didn't go over very well. So I had to make a decision. And I chose the career of personal training because I loved it so much and I didn't want to give up racing. So that's why I left the Army, and I've been a trainer ever since here in the Bay Area. And it's the best thing I ever did. Both the Army was good too at the time, but now this is a new chapter and I absolutely love it.
Oh, that's awesome. So what I wanted to dig into that history. So with the Army, like what led you to want to join? Like, and thank you for your service also for sharing that. What led you to kind of want to enter that space, and how did you get involved?
Well, as you mentioned in the introduction, I was a phys ed teacher, and I also worked for a newspaper. I saw the newspaper turning into an online thing. It was less and less popular for the written word. So I saw that sort of ending, and the teaching was great. I enjoyed it, but I felt like I needed more leadership or something different. You ever get that feeling like something's missing?
Yes,
so,
all the time.
I still get it too on occasion, but at that time it was very, very strong. So I was on summer break. I hopped in the car, and my parents have a condo in Hilton Head Island, South Carolina. I lived in New York at the time. So I told my parents I was going to drive down and stay in their condo and just kind of figure out my life. I felt like I needed to do something. And I met a Marine. He was the first person I met when I pulled into the condominium complex. And there was something about, I didn't know he was a Marine at the time. I was like, wow. I was like, this guy had like a presence about him. He had something I was looking for. I couldn't even put a finger on it. So I saw him the next day, like he was security walking around, and I introduced myself and he said, hi, my name's Wayne. I'm a former Marine recruiter, And then that led into me thinking about the Army, the Marine Corps initially, actually. And I felt the Army was a better fit for me. So really it's a sense of feeling like I needed more from life. And I just took a chance. I was 34 years old, and I just jumped in full force. And
that's amazing. So did you find through the Army, did you find some sense of purpose, some sense of fulfillment while you were there, while you served? Like, I know you mentioned you're an Army master fitness trainer. Like, how did that come about? Like, how did you so you took your phys ed and probably tied it into to what they did. So how did that work, or what does that title entail?
So to answer your first question, definitely I found purpose. It was when you're a teacher, you're sort of a lone ranger. You know, you're in charge of the classroom, and although there's administration and other instructors, it's really not glued together, at least where I was. The Army, if you're not glued together, you're falling apart, and there's more at stake. So it definitely gave me a sense of purpose, community, sense of belonging. And then the Army Master Fitness Trainer thing came in, because every time there was a school, I'd raise my hand and say, I want to go, I want to go, I want to go. I said yes to everything. So because I loved physical fitness, that was a definite yes. Like I begged for that school. And so what that entails is, well, now they have a new fitness test. It's the Army Combat Fitness Test, something like that. I forget the exact name of it. But at the time when I went, it was very limited to sit-ups, push-ups, and a run. That was it. So now it's more like a CrossFit type blend of things to really test your endurance and your strength. So that's what the course was based upon. You had to climb ropes, a little bit of a Spartan type of thing to it. At the time, I wasn't into Spartan racing. So basically what you do is you get certified in all these little types of things. And then you bring it back to your unit. And then you train the soldiers to not only maintain their physical fitness, but maintain their weights. That's a huge thing in the military. So I was in charge of that program. And if anybody was overweight for whatever reason, they didn't pass height and weight, I'd put them on a fitness program. And, you know, you can't be a nutritionist and tell them how to eat or subscribe anything, but you can just give them tips and pointers. So I was in charge of those soldiers. And then anytime there was a PT test, I ran the whole shebang and set up the program. Yeah.
That's super involved. That's awesome. So in regards to that, so you took your experience from, you know, phys ed, and then you led yourself into that role, right, with the Army. What was the point that you found? So you found some purpose, and then what got you into like Spartan racing and OCR? Like, how did that come about? Like, it was during the time you were serving in the Army, right, that you kind of got some exposure? So like, I know in the Army, I've seen this like online or things like that. They have these courses now where they have military people that have military background, and they do these obstacle courses on base or on location. So I can see how that ties into Spartan OCR. So what was your very first like race in that, on that journey with Spartan race?
So it was actually a soldier in my unit. We came back from Afghanistan. And you kind of feel a little untethered when you get back. It's just natural, like reintegrating. No matter how long you go, you can be gone for 3 months and you come back and you feel a little off, right? So he said, hey, there's a Spartan race in New Jersey. Do you want to go? I was like, oh, no, it's too expensive. I'm like, I've seen those before. I'm not signing up for that. So I actually wasn't scared of the challenge. I just remember it being pricey. So I was trying to budget at the time. And he's like, oh, come on. He kind of guilted me into it. So at the time, it was June of 2016. And I didn't know that they would have a Saturday and a Sunday race. So I just said, sure, I'll sign up. I signed up for Saturday. He signed up for Sunday. I had no idea. So I got there and I was by myself. And you know how a lot of times it's in the middle of nowhere and you have no service?
Yeah.
So I'm messaging him. I'm like, where are you? I'm by myself in this huge field. I have no idea what I'm getting into. So the beauty of it was it's called Team Red, White, and Blue. I happen to have their shirt on. It's not blue, it's red. But the name of the shirt, or the name of the program, is Team Red, White, and Blue. It's a military organization. And have you heard of them before?
I have not. No. Yeah. Could you share some details on that?
Sure. Sometimes they have a tent, believe it or not, at the Spartan races. It's not very often, but sometimes they do. So it's an organization to bring military members together, people like me who just came back from deployment, or if you PCS and you go to a new state, like when I went to Fort Benning, I may not know a lot of people. So they bring people together through the community, and it's usually an athletic event, but they do have other community events as well to unite soldiers together. And you don't have to be a soldier to be a part of it. It can be anyone. So I was a part of Team Red, White, and Blue through West Point. I happened to have the shirt on by myself, and then I see like 10 people at the starting line with the same shirt on.
Oh,
so
wow.
It's sort of like a Spartan seeing someone else with a Spartan shirt, and you're like, hey, Spartan. So I was like, oh, Team Red, White, and Blue. So my time was set for like 10:30, and this was like 9 a.m. So I run up to the guy at the front, and I said, hey, I'm with them. And he's like, oh, Team Red, White, and Blue. But meanwhile, I had no idea who these people were. So he let me in the chute at 9, which I don't know if that's the right or wrong thing to do. But I was lonely. And then I got with this new group of people and we all ran together. And at the time I was a trail runner, like you mentioned, just a straight up runner. So I had no idea how to do these obstacles. But I was so fast that one of the kids in the group said, man, you should run elite. He's like, you are booking. But I was like, I don't know about that. I have no idea how to climb. Well, I could climb a rope from the Army, but like, just, I don't know, the other odd obstacles, I was very unfamiliar with it. But I got through and I had a blast. So then the rest was history. That he didn't have to talk me into any other race after that. I signed up for everything that was nearby.
That's awesome. Which I'm just curious, which obstacle from that race you said it was a sprint, right? Okay, so yeah, so those that are listening and watching, sprints are 5Ks now, or standard now, 5K, 20 obstacles. At the time, back in 2016, it was probably more like 3 to 5 miles, right, in total.
Yeah, it was longer. It was longer than 3. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so back then it was, yeah, wasn't exactly that 5K, or right now everyone knows probably Spartan miles, right? It's plus or minus whatever they decide, the build team decides. So during that sprint, like which obstacle or obstacles, if there is more than one, that you kind of felt you were most challenged by, and then which one did you kind of like love? Which one did you like, okay, that's my jam. That's the thing I'm gonna own every time.
So, it's hard to say. I think my jam was the running. I was just so happy to be on the trail because that's still my jam. I love to be free and to run. So I don't think it was any one particular obstacle, because I was familiar with a lot of them, not the specific ones for Spartan, but I was familiar with obstacle courses through boot camp and things like that, and officer training. It was a culmination. It was a fact that I had to run whatever it was at the time, between 3 and 5 miles, go fast and do these 20 obstacles at the same time all at once. Whereas in training for the Army, is a very short course. You don't run for like a half a mile in between an obstacle.
Yeah.
You do them back to back and you're done. You're done in like 5 minutes or whatever. This was a long thing where I was just used to trail running. I was like, wow, now I got to stop and carry a bucket. And now I have to low crawl, and now I have to climb a rope. So it was more the culmination of everything that kind of wore me out. But at the same time, the whole thing was exhilarating. It was challenging, but exhilarating at the same time.
Awesome. Yeah, I can share a little bit about my journey too with the audience. Like I haven't dug into it that much, but my very first race was in March 2017, and it was a super, and it was an elite heat. I didn't know either, and I just jumped in with my 2 colleagues at the time that I worked with at the local gym here, and it was amazing. I felt like free, like you said. That's exactly what I feel when I run. I wasn't a natural runner going into, Spartans. I did a half marathon, 5K, and then a full marathon prior to, but yeah, just being out there on the course, I literally feel like I'm playing, I'm having fun, I'm free, and feeling like I'm flowing with the course, and just feeding myself in terms of joy, in terms of happiness. So with relation to what you found on that very first course to, your training and coaching as a trainer and coach, like how do you tie that in to coaching your clients, and what's your approach or philosophy on that?
That's a great question. When I worked at the Oshman Jewish Community Center in Palo Alto, and we had to write down what our mission is when they hired us, and mine was to have fun, like to find what it is that you love. Because if you have a client and they don't like heavy lifting, and you insist on that they do heavy lifts, they're not going to stay there for very long, right? They're going to find another trainer who suits their needs. So my first question to any client is, what do you like and what do you not like? If you hate the treadmill, I'll find something else for you. We can do the rower to warm up, or the elliptical. Obviously they cannot dislike everything, because then you're not going to get anywhere. But I think, like anything else in life, whether it's a job, partner, or fitness, if you don't love what you're doing and you're not excited to do it, you're doing the wrong thing. So that's number one. So is your jam. If you love Spartan, then what within, do you like sprints? Do you like supers? Do you like beasts? Do you want to try an ultra? You have to meet the client where they are and find out what they love. And then you'll spark their interest, and then they're going to naturally be fit. Like, I believe I'm fit by mistake. I'm fit because I choose to do what I love, and it makes me fit because I'm feel like you do on a course. I'm playing. You know, kids want to play. If you look at a playground, no one's telling them, oh, wait, do 10 squats before you go down the slide, or like, give me 20 like, they just find a way to use their body, and they're in bliss. And
Yes.
to me, that's the best trainer looks for the person's bliss and caters their training around that.
I love that. Yeah. No, that's an awesome approach. Very similar to how I work with my clients, and find those, quote unquote avatars, the ones that kind of suit you well and match up. So, being in the last 3-ish years now, we're almost on 3 years with COVID. What did you find, from when things shut down to, to today? Like, what have you found in terms of how it affected your career? Did you see a boost in terms of your coaching style, your coaching philosophy, or did you kind of adjust and pivot and do some things that you maybe were, avoiding previously, and maybe now kind of implementing and applying, and now being a better trainer coach?
That's a good question. Again, I would say I lost business for sure, at least initially. The JCC I worked at, I was referring to earlier, they eventually shut down. They hung on to us as long as they could. So some of my clients I gained virtually, because we could no longer be in gyms at the time, or you'd go into the gym for a little bit, right? And then it'd shut down again because there'd be another wave of COVID. So I gained in that respect. I gained this whole virtual world where I can still inspire people like we're doing right now through a screen. So it's still possible to connect. So that was a plus. And what I lost in clientele, I gained in education. As you referred to in the beginning as well, I went for my PhD in transpersonal psychology because I was avoiding it. I had this post 9/11 education bill through the military, and I said, I'll never use it. I'll never use it. But deep in the back of my mind, I always wanted a PhD. I just couldn't slow down enough to do it. So maybe other people couldn't slow down enough to spend time with their family or to read a book. It could be anything. For me, it was using this free education that the military afforded me, and I couldn't have done it without them. So I took the chance, and believe me, I fought it too. I was like, I don't want to go back to school. I'm too old. And I made up every excuse, but the voice telling me to go was much stronger. And if it hadn't been for COVID, I'm not sure I ever would have went back. So that was there's beauty in every storm, right? So that was the beauty that came out of it for me. And I spent 2.5 years studying Spartan racing and psychology. And it got me through COVID. So
that is awesome.
Because the army pays you to go as well. So not only did they pay for my education, but you get a stipend to go back to school. So that helped me survive COVID financially too.
Yeah. And that's interesting how you kind of tied that back in, having that ability to take advantage of free education, and then you having to have left the army to pursue your Spartan racing. You tied it back in somehow, and that's amazing. Could you share with the audience what is transpersonal psychology? Could you dig into that a bit? I've never heard that term before, so I'm curious myself, what that entails or what that involves.
Yeah, same here. I didn't know what it was either until I looked it up. So it's basically the body, mind, and soul. It's who the person is. It's another way to say is to remove the mask. So we all have a facade, right? Like if you're coaching, you have a certain demeanor. Like if you're with your kids, another demeanor. And it's not intentional. It's just the way society is. You interact differently with different people naturally. But the whole goal of transpersonal psychology is to remove the layers, or like Shrek would say, like the peeling the onion, right? We all have layers.
Yeah.
And transpersonal psychology seeks to get to the deepest layer that you can go to at that time anyway. So maybe when you're younger, you can only, you have more defense mechanisms because we're insecure when we're young. And as you get older, I think it's a bit easier to shed those layers and really show people who you are. And that's what I loved about transpersonal psychology. So it's not saying you're labeled with ADHD or bipolar disorder. You don't label people. You ask them who they are. So
I love that.
that's the essence of transpersonal psychology.
Got it. Okay. And then you've tied that into Spartan Race somehow. So I know
Mhm.
you probably can't dig into that awesome thing you're working on, but there is something awesome that Tara's working on that's probably gonna be announced at some point related to Spartan Race, right? And what you studied. So we'll leave it at that, right?
Yes, sure.
So I wanted to dig into your Spartan Race journey a little bit more. So you said you are now competing in age group, but you did start Masters Elite. And I watch, what you post, and I am inspired by it, honestly. So I feel like you're sending a message to a lot of the age group competitors out there, like, hey, if you really train, properly, you take care of your body, you focus on, great self-care and all these different things. And like we talked about earlier, just, finding the joy in what you're doing, you can achieve these amazing things. It also helps that you're an awesome runner, but that's something we can always work on, right? So you recently tell us what you recently placed. You said I think you placed recently at Trifecta World Championships in Greece, right? So what was that journey like, being out there in Greece and competing?
It was absolutely amazing. So I would say it was a battle though. It was probably the hardest battle of any Spartan race I've ever done, because the best of the best come out there. And the first day, I think I was third in the sprint and then second in the super, or no, I don't, it's like a big blur right now. All I know is everything was tough. It was tougher than the States for whatever reason. I don't know, time zone change, but definitely the competition was a big part of it. I wound up third overall in the series. So what they do is you do the sprint, super, and beast. And I had a second, a third, and a fifth place
Oh,
in those events. So it depends on the time, though, how close. So if you are like third place, but you miss second place by a second, your points are going to still be really good. So it's a whole point system. So I think I wrote it down because I seem to forget all the things I've done. But the overall consensus was third in age group 45 to 49 in the whole trifecta weekend. So you can actually place pretty well in all three, but your points might not be enough to tally up to the final result. So I wasn't sure that I placed because I had so much trouble on the beast. It was 16 miles minus the penalty loops. So I had a really hard time because prior to Greece, I hadn't run more than 6 miles probably in the prior 6 months. So I was not trained at all beyond the super. So it was nothing short of a miracle that I wound up third. And my goal was to make my mom proud because I brought her with me. And here I am struggling in the beast, crossing the finish line, thinking, man, I let her down. Like, there's no way I placed. And I happened to look at the board. I was like, oh, let me just look. And it said third. I was like, oh, so it turned out I placed close enough to the other people that all my points from the 3 races tallied up to a third. So it was amazing. Everything about it.
awesome. You said part of the beast, you said the race, it cut off a little bit, and I don't know if
Oh,
her connection was bad, but like you said, how many miles was that, or what did it end up being?
16.
16 miles.
And the most I had run up until then was 6 miles probably in the prior 6 months.
Oh,
So
that is
I
brutal.
was I was I was burnt. Like, even now it's hard to remember which ones I placed well in, because even at the end of that race, I was mentally done. Have you ever been just, my body was still moving, but my mind was gone. I was shot
Yeah.
because my mind wasn't trained to run 16 miles. It's not just, sometimes your mind can talk your body into doing things, but I hadn't trained my mind. So 6 miles, I could go out and run 6 miles right now and not think twice about it. But when you
Yeah.
tell me I have to do a 3 miler the next day, a 6 mile, and a 16 miler the next day, try getting your mind to understand that if you haven't prepared. So really, Spartan is more than the body, kind of like transpersonal. It's the body, mind, and what does your spirit want? Is your spirit guiding you? Because sometimes that's stronger than both of them.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. Yeah, like my very first beast was Big Bear, and that was not a good idea, but I literally like had to fight my mind the whole time towards the latter half, and I can totally empathize on that. Yeah, so someday I'll take on Greece just like you. So it is the was the challenge because of having to travel overseas, like adjusting when you initially arrived, like how much time did you have before your first race, that weekend to adjust?
I got there late Wednesday night, and the race started Friday, but at noon. They start which helps a lot. So if you get there late on Wednesday, I think you're okay, because then you have all day Thursday, and that's when they do the Parade of Nations. It's really cool. So you're up a little bit late maybe on Thursday because you're enjoying the festivities. And then the race on Friday is the sprint they do first. So it's at least the shorter one, and it starts in the afternoon. So I really, time zone did play a bit of a role, but I really just think there's just like some strong people out there, and you don't know who's there. So there was only one American girl that I knew in my age group that came. So everyone else was a blur. You're in this pocket of people 40 to 49, and you don't know who's in the upper bracket with you. So I'm looking at all these girls having no idea what their abilities are, or if they're even in my age group. So that was very stressful, because when you race here, you know everyone. You'll be like, okay, Danielle's there. I know she's pretty fast. I got to pace myself with her. But there was no knowledge. I didn't know who was who.
Oh, okay. So you didn't do any like reconnaissance before heading out there, right?
No.
Okay,
No.
awesome. That must have been an amazing experience, just like your very first race, like having that feeling of, okay, I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm going to go crush this course. So you've also done DEKA. I wanted to kind of dig into DEKA a bit. So those that are listening, DEKA is like the next next wave of quote unquote racing, but it's an indoor setting. Spartan is the parent company to DEKA, and DEKA is basically 10 zones, and you if you've heard of high rocks or similar type of events, it's 10 zones that challenge your functional fitness, and you work on strength, movements, endurance, and conditioning. So with DEKA, actually Tara has competed at CrossFit of Fremont. I'm the program director there, leading the DEKA Bay Area program. What's been your take on DEKA? Like, getting into that. I remember we had a conversation about like, oh, this is the new thing, and this might be my jam going forward. What's your take on DEKA so far, and how have you placed in your age group as well when you've competed?
I love DEKA because, like what we referred to earlier with finding your bliss, like what's your enjoyment with fitness, it has something for everyone. So if you don't like running, you have the strong. So you have your 10 zones you referred to, and you don't have to run. You just have to walk to the other zone, or you might want to skip a little bit and try to get there fast. But essentially, there's no running. Then the mile, if maybe you're quick on your feet, but you're not a distance person, then that's for you with the same 10 zones. And then the fit is, of course, my jam, because I love to run, so I can gain on people a bit. The run's a little bit longer, right? It totals 3 miles. So that's what I love about DEKA. Another thing is that it's indoors. You don't have the mud pit or the dunk wall or any of the mud. You don't have to worry about the elements, right? You're worried about your hands getting cold if it's a cold day, if it rains. So it has that too for people who don't want, to get muddy or dirty or just have to worry about elements. And gym owners or program managers like you can bring it into your gym and add that into someone's personal training plan, or just get people in only want to focus on DEKA, and you can help them. And I just think all around it's very practical.
Yeah, I feel like we're so early in DEKA. It's like it's there's so much potential and so much growth with it, and we're barely like scratching the surface. And you competed at the age group world championships, right, recently? And you placed third in your age group. What was that feeling like, competing world championships DEKA versus world championships Greece? Like, the two are obviously different types of races, but like, did you feel the same kind of bliss, same kind of joy doing both? And which would you choose? Which one would you favor more, Spartan or DEKA?
Good question. I favor Spartan. Now,
okay.
I thought it was DEKA for a minute. When the first few races came around for DEKA, I was like, oh yeah, I needed a change. I was ready. But then I ran San Jose and the Spartan, San Jose Spartan. And I was dying on the distance course. And I said, because I was focusing on DEKA. And at that moment, when I finished, I decided that Spartan was my true love because I love being outdoors. Now, DEKA it's still there. It might be my second love. It's still there. I'm not breaking up with DEKA, but Spartan is my main thing. And in terms of the championships, same thing at DEKA. I mean, these girls are just incredible. You know, you're even like I say, even when I get first place in a race, it depends on who shows up, right? So I know there's faster girls than me. They just didn't show up that day. So it's not that I'm number one. I'm number one in that moment, but I could be 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 on any given day who shows up. So in Atlantic City for DEKA, they all showed up. So I was ranked second in the fit on the leaderboard going into the championships. I came in 5th place in the fit.
Oh, wow.
So I love to run, so I thought the fit was in the bag. I had it in the bag. I had stopped training for DEKA because I decided I love Spartan more. Went to Greece, did okay in Greece, and I hadn't touched a DEKA station in probably 3 months. So it showed. So no matter how fast I was on that fit in the championships, the girls were that much faster on the stations. And I wound up in 5th place. So then the mile came the second day. I'm like, I am not leaving Atlantic City with a 5th place and coming home and telling people, oh, I'm 5th. So I wound up barely getting 3rd in the mile in Atlantic City. Barely. I didn't do the strong event. Again, I don't like running. So I just went to the championships for the mile and the fit. So I did wind up in 3rd in the mile. And it was close by like seconds. I mean, you really have to be strong in the stations. That's what I learned. You have to be. And my speed doesn't make up for it.
Oh, yeah. So being efficient with so when you say stations, you mean zones, right? Like these.
Oh, I'm sorry, the zones. Yes.
So just to kind of speak the language Tara's talking about, you know, the RAM lunges or the RAM burpees or the rower, the skier. So all these 10 zones are designed by none other than Yancey Cope and team, and they're brutal. They can be brutal if you don't train them. It's gonna be a world of hurt that day. But that's the purpose of training. That's why we train. That's why we don't just work out to work out. We train with a purpose. We train with a goal in mind, which is to hopefully crush that, you know, quote unquote course in DEKA. And then same thing with Spartan. You know, if we don't train our run, we don't train our obstacles and efficiency with these obstacles and maintain our strength, you know, endurance, all that, it's going to be a challenge for sure. So thank you for being an inspiration to all those, you know, aspiring age group athletes, including me. Your most recent event, you did, I think you said recently you did Castaic sprint and you placed 1st. Congratulations on that. Awesome achievement. Was that like a big like gap between you and second, or was it like a close race?
1 second difference.
Really? what was that?
Second.
What was the difference maker? Like what allowed you to get that 1 second gap to win that one?
So 2 things are in my favor. One was that I was a little more efficient on the obstacles. She is faster than me. Hands down, if it was a clean race for both of us, she blows me out of the water. That's what I mean by who shows up, the elements, what happens. So I have a lot of respect for her. But she did a few penalty loops. But now we're at the finish line. And I get off of Helix was the last obstacle right before the finish line. I saw her. I said, no way, she's right there. I ran as fast as I could. I mean, there was like hardly any distance between Helix and the finish line, but I ran so hard. That's where your mind kicks in. That I ran by her. She goes, oh, crap. And she looked to the side and saw me. I took 3 steps in front of her, touched the timing map before her. And I was like, oh, man, I think I got you by like 3 seconds because it was like a good 3 steps. It felt like 3 seconds. But it depends who starts in the chute, where they start, right? So I probably left the chute. The gun time was a little before her. So when we looked at the results, it was 1 second. And I said to myself, that's where the mind comes in. That's determination. And thankfully, she's still my friend. She wasn't mad. She was like, oh, my gosh, girl, you got me. Like, and we hugged at the end. But sometimes it takes your mind to just push that extra step, and it makes a 1 second. That's all it takes.
Yeah. Where do you find that, when you say mind, how do you train your mind? Like, are there things you do that you practice as a, in your training plan, your training regimen? Like, are there things that you practice to help, with mindset, clarity, all that stuff? Is there something specific that you'd like to share with the listeners and audience?
Sure. There's a few things. One, I played sports when I was younger, from like 4 years old onward. And I always had a coach in my head. So sometimes I'll replay with a coach. Come on, Pipia, let's go, let's go. So I have the fortune to have people, in my environment when I was raised, encouraging me. So it could be a voice of like a softball coach that I had when I was 10. I just call on all of that when I'm working out, and kind of talk to myself using their voice, if that makes sense. And then number two, I always have to mention my dad. So my dad felt like he ran out of time. He passed away in 2018 when I moved out here. And I'll never forget, he said, "Tara, I ran out of time." So when I'm running or working out, particularly if I'm on a course, I always tell myself I don't want to run out of time. Not just time in the sense of a race, right? Because you could run out of time on the course. But I want to push my body as far as I can until there comes a time where we can't, right? We're all going to get older at some point, and you're going to wish you ran that marathon or wish you pushed harder. So I try to live every day as if it's my last, so I don't run out of time and I don't waste the body that I'm given, the mind, the soul, I want to use it all. Right? What's the point of just half-assing everything through life? So that's really what I tell myself. Like, I just did a short run today of a half marathon tomorrow, and I didn't feel like running a couple. You should run like maybe a mile or two, get your legs going the day before. I didn't want to. But I told myself, what's your alternative? Like, you're going to sit down? Like, tomorrow may never come. So my alternative, I had no alternative. So I got up, and once you get your feet rolling, then everything else follows. You just got to take the first step. So those are the two things, coaches that are in my head. And I always think of my dad. I don't want to run out of time, and I want to make him proud. So
That's absolutely beautiful. Thank you for sharing that, Tara. Yeah, I kind of am similar. Like, I think about my dad all the time, and he passed, was that 2002? And everything I did leading up to his passing was for him. Like, even me being an engineer trying to graduate, and he passed my last year in college, and it was really hard for me to get through that. And that's why on my right arm, everyone sees this tattoo that's dedicated to him. It's like, when I'm running out there on that, finding my bliss, I'm constantly, like, he's on the inside of my forearm here, and I see his face, and even on the outside of my right shoulder here, it's like that constant reminder. And he's talking to me through those races. It's amazing how these important people in our lives can drive us. I want to wrap up here. I want to make sure that I respect your time. I know you got some awesome people to go celebrate, life with, and you were mentioning before we talked some protein cookies.
That's right. Yeah.
So usually what I do is I end these podcast interviews with a quick fire set of questions. So I'm gonna throw 5 quick fire questions at you. Okay. So there's no right or wrong answer. All you got to think about is, what comes to mind. It could be like a single answer, or like a short, sentence, right? So you ready for the very first one?
Sure.
Nothing to overthink here.
Oh, I'm scared now. Okay, bring it.
Okay. So my very first question I always ask everyone is so we are coaches, we are trainers, and athletes, right? So what's your favorite form of fuel for your body? So fuel could be like a drink or a meal or something like that. So what's your favorite way to fuel your body as an athlete, and how do you? I'm curious because I want to know, does that help you be so awesome at what you do, right? So yeah.
Okay, food wise is salad with mixed nuts, raisins, sweet potato, and grilled chicken, and Perform Elite before I race. If that's a little tidbit for you, if you want to try it.
Perform Elite, is that like that's some kind of supplement, right?
Has like beet juice and those kind of things in it.
Ah, okay. I love that. All right. So thinking back, we all have someone that inspires us. You just shared something very personal about your dad. Who is in your view, in your life, who is your superhero?
My dad still is.
Ah,
You don't have to
okay.
be here to still be my superhero.
Yeah, same. My dad is my superhero as well. All right, awesome. So if you had to identify, and I don't know if you're a fan of um, like comics or even like, the most recent things that we see on film, like Marvel, superhero movies and things like that. Do you identify with a superhero? Like thinking in those terms, like if you are a fan or if you've maybe seen a glimpse of them, like is there one that you've seen that maybe you can identify with?
Well, I've never personally identified with one. However, in the Army, they always called me Wonder Woman all the time. Wonder Woman. And one guy drew a picture of Wonder Woman because he was an artist and gave it to me. So I just kind of adopted that one.
Oh, wow. Okay. Now we know. We're gonna call you Wonder Woman. That's awesome. Um, let's see. So last one. I think that was 5, right? Yeah. So last one. Now thinking about all those people you shared earlier that you have these voices from your coaches, growing up until probably today. I don't know if you have your own coach right now who helps you become the best version of you. Is there a mentor that you have or someone that has been there for you to help guide you, on your journey as a coach, trainer, athlete?
It's a good question. Again, another good question. I don't have a coach, and it's not someone who's like a physical influence. It's my mom. I think she's an emotional influence. She's my biggest fan. So although my dad's my superhero, my mother always told me to give 110% to everything I did in life. Everything. If you're going to do it, it's not worth doing unless you give it your all. And she's still my greatest supporter. She was there for me in Greece. And when I got third, she cried. She was so proud. So by far, my mother is the reason why I keep pushing as well. Not just my dad, but her.
Oh,
She
that's
believes.
beautiful.
Yeah.
That's so beautiful. Has she done a race? Just curious. Has she done a
No,
race?
no. She works out like a lot, like 3 to 5 times a week, but everyone keeps asking her. I really, really want her to. She's 74. So I don't know. I think I'd have to do an open wave and kind of go with her, but I'm glad you said it out loud because I'm going to mention it to her again. She needs to do one.
Yes.
Yeah.
Share this podcast with her. The reason I asked that is I don't know if you've seen the Wonder Woman of Ninja Warrior. But her mom and her, they both compete for Ninja Warrior. And so, you and your mom potentially could be the ones that compete for Spartan. So just,
That'd be so much fun. I'm definitely going to show this podcast to her.
make sure you give me credit on that. I want to see you both out there. That'll be awesome.
Will do.
Yeah. So, well, thank you so much, Tara, for joining me on my podcast. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of my listeners and audience that watch inspired by your story. Hopefully we'll have some more, conversations like this in the future, because I'm sure as I'm competing out there in age group, I'll want to share. I want to get some insight from you as well on being the best age group competitor I can be as well. So thank you so much again. Enjoy those podcasts. Podcasts, protein cookies.
Okay.
And yeah, we'll catch you next time. Okay.
Okay. Thanks for having me, Joe.
All right. Thank you, Tara. Appreciate you.
Appreciate you too. Bye-bye.
Bye. All right.